guys, it's Kevin in my review for Peppermint. And what Peppermint is essentially about is we center on the character of Riley North, and she's basically living a normal life with her family when tragedy strikes, when this shootout goes on and tragically does kill her husband and daughter, and basically after years of, no justice given, no justice given to the, people who perpetuated this event, she decides that she's going to go on a killing spree and hopefully finally bring the cartel who murdered them to justice. So, Peppermint in general, I didn't really care about this movie. I like Jennifer Garner, I really do, but this film in general just looked incredibly generic to me. It looked like something we've seen 1,000 times before. It didn't really look like it was doing anything all that different, so I really was not all that excited for it, and it's about what I expected. I mean, look, Peppermint's not a bad movie. I don't think this is at all a bad movie, but it's extremely middle of the road, and it is definitely nothing that you absolutely need to see, but we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And look, I will give the film this. There's really not too many things that I do enjoy about this movie, because like I said, a lot of it's just very kind of whatever. But the thing I will give this film is its main star. If Jennifer Garner was not in this movie, I probably would have hated, because I do actually think she did a really good job as Riley North. You can see the emotional damage that these losses have done to her, and you see her motivation in that way. And you take a character that I think could be kind of unlikable and very questionable at times, and you really can see where she's coming from. You can see that she doesn't really feel like she has anything else to lose, and she feels like this is something that she kind of needs to do as a mother, and I think she did do a very good job there. The emotion, like I said, is really felt, and I think Garner really did give it her all with a script that is very mediocre, which I'll get into in a little bit. She really did, I think, rise to the occasion here, and I think overall she really did kill it in this film. Aside from her, though, the rest of the performances are just pretty bland. There's not really much else to say with the rest of the performances. Everyone else is just really overdoing it. No one is inherently terrible, but they're all just very cartoony, and there's just not really a lot to say there. But now I do want to get to the directing and the writing, because this film is directed by the same director of Taken. I'm not sure of this director's name, but I'm not going to say the film doesn't have a style, because he does know what he's doing at this point. You know, he's trying to craft a revenge thriller, and the film does do a very good job with that. It's just that his style just didn't really add anything to the film. There's really nothing that amazing when it comes to his directing. But again, he's done this many times before, so I don't really think his directing is the issue. It's really the writing that's the issue, and that the writing in this film, it's just really flat. There just really is not a lot going on narratively in general. I will say, the main story in this film, her going after, this whole sort of gang because of what they did to her husband and daughter, it's a good plot. I do like the idea of that plotline overall. I do think there's a lot of potential with that story. It's just the film never really focuses on what it should be focusing on. The first, I will say, like 20 to 30 minutes, I actually was kind of enjoying, and that's mainly because I thought the story was actually pretty well set up. We get the sense that she's this mother, and, obviously, family means a lot to her, and when her family is killed, and, the people that are suspects have to go to court, and nothing's happening to them, you really do feel sorry for her. You really feel like she's not getting through to these people, and you want her to inflict that revenge on them. You want her to go after them, but she doesn't go after them. She goes after the gang that murdered her family, which on paper doesn't sound like a bad idea, but the gang in this film, a lot of them were not really all that active in what was going on. They just simply were complicit in it. The people that you actually want to see murdered and brutalized, we don't really see that. We hear about it here and there, but we just don't really see anything about it, and I think that really does hurt this film overall, because while there are things that this film does do a good job with, getting into this idea that maybe, Riley is not the most likable of people, the film does not really dive into it all that much. It doesn't really get into the whole, crisis that's going on. There's a sort of debate where is she a hero or is she a vigilante? Should we respect her for what she's doing or should we admonish her for it? The film just doesn't really dive into these things. It kind of just sort of throws things at you, and it doesn't really give the proper depth to much of anything that's going on. Instead, the film is more concerned about her going after the bigger bosses of this gang. And again, this would not be a problem if this story was actually interesting, but it's just not. Most of these guys, they don't have really any connection to Riley, except for the fact that they just happen to be part of the gang in which, Riley's husband and daughter were murdered. Sure, maybe they planned this out, but they were not the ones who actually gunned them down. Those are the people we want to see her go after, and we just don't. And the film, for some reason, doesn't want to focus on that as much, and that really did annoy me overall, because there were things that they really could have dived more into, but they just really didn't. As far as the police side of things, that whole thing is also a mess. I mean, all these officers are so bland. There's not really anything to them. The only one who has any sort of character is John Gallagher Jr., and the second that he showed up, I'm like, I know exactly where his character is going. And midway through the third act, there is this huge twist that my entire audience was like dumbfounded at, and I honestly wasn't shocked at all because it seemed so predictable where they were going to go with him. And honestly, just take a guess as to where you think his character goes. You're probably right, because it's very predictable, and there's a lot of things in this movie that's very much like that. And that's really the biggest thing with this film overall. There's just not really a lot going on narratively. She goes after this group of guys. She moves on to the next one. She tries to exact revenge on them. She finishes doing so. She moves on to the next one. And there just really isn't a lot happening other than that. We really don't see her many other points when she's not going after these guys. We see maybe a couple scenes of her here and there, but for the most part, it's just her going after these guys. And if that's what you guys want to see, if you just want to see Jennifer Garner be a badass, then by all means go, because you'll enjoy this movie if that's all you really want to see. Clearly, there are some people that want to. My dad, for example, I saw this movie with my dad, and he really enjoyed it because it was Jennifer Garner being a badass, and that's fine. It's just, for me, her reasoning and her connection to all of this, it just wasn't really there. And I care much more about the impact this has on her than the revenge that we're seeing taking place. Because again, there's not a lot of revenge happening with the people she's going after. It's just people that are, it's just like a mob boss who, again, was not that much of an active player in this tragedy that went down. And I think the film really did miss a big opportunity there. I will give the film this, though. Cinematography-wise, this film does do a very good job. Something I did enjoy is that Riley is not invincible. Riley is not a superhero. She does get beat up a lot. Very seriously beaten up, in fact. There are some very, very brutal shots of these horrible, leg wounds and a lot of stuff that happens to her, and I'm glad the film did not try to shy away from that. Garner does a really good job showing that pain and showing that even though she is very determined, she's not untouchable. Like, she can definitely get hurt, and a lot of films would try to make it seem like the hero is just a superhero, the vigilante is just a superhero, and I'm glad they didn't go in that direction with Riley overall. And I will say there are some action scenes here and there that were all right, but they're very forgettable. Like, there really isn't one action scene that I can pinpoint in this film that really stood out to me, because they all just kind of bled together in the end. And again, that's definitely not a good thing when a lot of this movie are action scenes, and they're just, like I said, not very memorable in that sense. The score's fine, I guess. the pacing is all over the place. This film starts in media res, and it does that thing where, like, it cuts back to 5 years later. There's really no reason to do it. The only reason it's there is so you're like, okay, this is where she's gonna get. Let's see how she gets from point A to point B, and you're just kind of scratching your head. Okay, why did I even see that? What was even the point of us seeing that? Like, it's not really anything that interesting. It's just her going after some dude, and then cut to 5 years later, before everything went down, and then seeing how everything else played out. And I don't really know why they decided to do that. There's a lot of cutting around there, and the film just does not really have a clear focus on what it really wants to do. Like I said, the villains in the film are also incredibly disposable. I did not give a shit about them or the people in the precinct. Peppermint overall, it's just a very generic movie. There's not a lot to say about it. Jennifer Garner does the best with what she has. I do think that she did a good job, and there are some interesting things here and there, but most of it the film chooses to not really get into. It's a lot of talking and a lot of discussing things, but it doesn't really want to take the time to show them. It doesn't want to show us, her training. It doesn't want to show us her inflicting pain on the people that have actually wronged her. No, it wants to focus on these people who are just the bosses of the people that went after her family, that honestly didn't really play that big of a role. And I think that really is a detriment to this film overall. Ultimately, Peppermint is just a very generic revenge thriller. You've seen it 1,000 times. The only reason to really see it is for Garner's performance, but honestly, even that I don't think is that much of a reason to see it, because as good as she is, she still can't really save this movie from utter mediocrity. And this is one of those films where the second it ended, I was like, I'm already kind of forgetting. Like, I'm already forgetting a lot of things that happened here. And with that being said, I am going to give Peppermint overall a C-. But overall, guys, in my review of Peppermint overall, let me know if you guys saw this movie. If you have seen, love to hear your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.